All right, welcome everybody. Sorry about that little late start there. Had some technical difficulties on our end, so we sorted it out. We'll try to cram as much as we can in there, maybe go a little bit over time, but I think we should still be able to accomplish most of what we were looking for inside of this webinar. So, Free Training Thursday, thank you for attending. Thank you for sticking with us. We just have a couple points that we're going to be talking about today, because in the grand scheme of things, this is just meant to help you understand how to do progress billing within OfficeTools, as far as OfficeTools can take you. So there's two methods that we're going to be discussing. One is just shortly named creating and deleting. Method number two is going to be called outside help, and then progress bill option inside of OfficeTools. I'm sure you guys have all seen it. We're going to discuss a little bit about what that actually does. Try not to spend too much time in this slideshow. If you guys need any extra support past this, please visit us, abacusnext.com/support. You can kind of take a look at training, take a look at support, all of that will come down that way. And then, as you guys probably know, any upcoming webinars that you'd like to attend, abacusnext.com/webinars. Take a look and see what's on the docket. Sign up for the topics that you think you might want to sit in on, and we'll go ahead and kind of get you situated with that. Last but not least, for those of you guys who have seen it, or for those of you guys who haven't, I do want to bring up something really cool that we just implemented. It's called Feature Upvote. It's something new inside of OfficeTools that allows you guys to post some of your ideas on what you want to see inside of OfficeTools and have other users of the program upvote them, make some comments about how to make the program a little bit better. Please keep it relatively clean inside of there. Any type of features that you would like to add should go into Feature Upvote. This is not for technical issues or training questions. This is for features that you would like to see put into the program. So the website is on there. It's also part of the new splash screen on version 2.0.818.59. If you guys have updated to that, you probably have seen it. If you haven't, you probably want to jump on that release. But you can also access it, officetools.featureupvote.com. Real quick on the Abacus Maximus stuff, if you guys have sat in on a webinar up to this point, you've heard of this. The Accelerate conference has been changed into Abacus Maximus. It's a bigger conference. We're doing bigger things. Take a look at that, abacusmaximus.com. Tickets are on sale, and it will be from July 9th to July 11th. Take a look and see what that has to offer. A lot of good networking events, a lot of good gleaning from other OfficeTools users. So get in there, take a look at that. If you guys are able to come, it would be a really, really, really good resource for your office. And that's going to be the end of our slideshow. So let's go ahead and jump into the actual OfficeTools program here. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this up. And let's dive into getting some of our progress billing done. Now, a little bit of a disclaimer here in the beginning. What we're going to be discussing today is not a new feature. It isn't something that we've added recently for progress billing. What you have to understand is that these are going to be what we would say, what common terminology here, workarounds. This is going to be a way to accomplish it, not perfect, but close. And you guys have to understand that this isn't an actual progress billing feature. It's just a way to get that line of billing done. Okay, so when we go through these, understand that this isn't going to be perfect, but it should at least get you pretty close. Okay, so method number one that we were talking about, which is creating and deleting. I'm going to give you the skeleton, and then we'll walk through it inside of the program. The skeleton of creating and deleting can be broken into 4 different steps. Step number 1 is going to be to track your time, right? So progress billing a lot of times is going to be based around time. Now, any of these steps can be moved around, right? So if you want to bill first, then track your time, or collect a payment, then track your time, or collect your payment, invoice, and then track, right? These can be moved around, but these are the components for progress billing. So again, component number 1 will say track your time. Component number 2 is going to be to create your invoices, but you don't associate the time to those invoices. Okay. That's a really key piece to the workaround for progress billing that we're going to walk into here, is when you create your invoices, you have to leave your time unassociated at that moment. Number three is actually finishing the job / engagement and creating the what we would quote unquote call true invoice. And that means for the total amount of the engagement, creating an invoice that represents that total and attaching all of the time that you have for that specific progress bill to that job. And then last but not least is actually deleting the intermittent invoices. The bills you might have sent out during the course of your job, it's at that point that you need to go back and delete those. That way you don't have remnant invoices sitting in the system or doubling AR in the long run. So that's kind of the skeleton for that. You have your time tracking, you have your invoices during the engagement, then you have your final invoice or true invoice with your associated time, and then at the end you want to go ahead and just delete your invoices. So what does that mean? How do we do it? Inside of billing, this section here, we have some time that we've tracked. So we don't need to do the time tracking part. We already know how to do that. We have it available here under the billable time section. So let's just say while we're working on the job here, we want to bill this client a $10,000 engagement. So we got a $10,000 idea. So we're going to go in, and this is kind of where the cool part is going to happen. So we're going to come in here and we're going to create a new invoice. Okay, click Add Invoice right from the Invoices button. Okay. Once we're here, what we want to do is we want to leave the invoice in a status other than final. So either in process or review. We're going to leave it in that status for the foreseeable future. Okay. Second piece is we're going to put in here whatever our basic description is, progress bill for engagement, and we'll just leave it at that for now. All right. Now remember that this is actually going to be our true bill. So this is going to be for our full $10,000 here. Okay. So hopefully you guys are following along here. I assume if you're in progress billing that you probably know a little bit about the billing process. So I'm not going to cover what the invoices are and that type of thing. But make sure you leave it in process. Plug in a little description here, and then utilize the entire engagement amount. Okay, so what the end goal bill is. This isn't for your intermittent bills. This is for the final bill. So now you're going to have that. So if we close this down, inside of OfficeTools, you'll now have your $10,000 in process progress bill. And if you wanted to, I don't know if you guys are using it or if you even know about it, inside of the invoice itself, there's a note section down here that you can utilize for internal notes. So you can say, true bill here, or final bill for progress, whatever it is. You guys get the idea. And we'll close it down. And that'll put that in the note column so you know what that $10,000 invoice is for. Okay. So now we have that final piece. We have that engagement level invoice for the entire amount. We have some time in there. So now let's say we want to bill out $2,000 against that invoice. So what we're going to do at that point is actually just go in, create another invoice. Okay? And this is one we're actually going to be sending to the client. So we can put on here for whatever services we want, progress bill number 1, intermittent progress bill for $2,000, whatever it is. Okay. So we go inside of here. We'll just plug in $2,000. We'll pretend like that's what our progress bill is for, and that's all we have to do. Okay. Now, this up here is up to you on where you want to put this. Okay. You can leave it in process, you can leave it in review, you can leave it in final, whatever you want. Now, the one thing to keep in mind is that if you don't put it in final, then it's not going to show an AR. So on a progressive, AR report, if you don't put this in final, then this invoice won't ever show. Okay, so in this case, what you might want to do is plug this in as final. Now, it doesn't really matter in the long run because we're going to be deleting this invoice in this method. Okay. So now we have a $2,000 invoice right here. Now we have some finance charges that are from this, so typically that's going to say just $2,000. Okay, so ignore the $118.74. So you have a $2,000 invoice for progress bill number 1. You have your $10,000 progress bill sitting up there. So, with some calculation, you know that you have $8,000 left. Now, if you've noticed, neither one of those invoices has time yet, right? Because at this point, we're not worrying about the time. So in method number one, your time is actually going to be added at the very end of the job, and we'll kind of get to that point and understand why that is when we get down there. Okay. So let's just go ahead and say we're going to create another invoice. Progress bill invoice number 2. We'll say that this is for $3,500. We're good on that. We'll go ahead and close that down. It pops in there. So now you know that you have $5,500 into your $10,000, and then you're going to create one more invoice for the remainder balance. So that would be $4,500. Close that down. Okay. So now your 3 invoices add up when you add them up to $10,000. Now, what you guys are probably thinking is, well, each of those invoices that we created, the $2,000, $3,500, and $4,500 invoices, we would send those to the client and they would pay them. What do we do with the payment? Right? Because that's part of our puzzle is what are we doing with our payments for those invoices? Here's the trick. You're going to go into the payment section, and when you actually track that payment, so when they create a new payment here, the trick to this piece is that you will not associate that invoice or that payment to an invoice. Okay. So here's that progress bill invoice sitting down here at the bottom. We're not going to be associating that payment to this invoice. What we wanted to do is actually remain in retainer. And I'll show you why in just a few seconds. So that's the key. And remember that this is a workaround. This is not perfect. So your reports might be a little weird in the midst of progress billing a client, right? You might have some credit balances in some cases, or some, maybe inflated AR or inflated WIP numbers down the line. But ultimately, when we get to the final product, our reporting will be correct, which is our ultimate goal in this process. There are other ways I can do this, but I will royally screw up my reports. So I have to be careful with how I progress down progress billing. So I got my retainer selected. I'm going to go ahead and click Save and Close here. So that's going to be sitting in retainer. It's accessed right there. Okay. So now we have time, we have our progress bill total invoice, we have our intermittent invoices, and we have a retainer payment. So how do we tie all those pieces together to start making sense of this jumbled mess? Here's what we would do. Once you're done, so at this point, you've done all the work, your progress billing is finished, you're going to go into the invoicing section, okay? And you're actually going to wipe those intermittent invoices out of OfficeTools. Okay. So I'm going to go in here, I'm going to change these invoices back to review, I'm going to delete them, and I'm going to be left with the $10,000. Okay. Now what I want to do in that is I want to go ahead and open up that invoice, and I want to go to the time card section inside this invoice. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and add. And what's cool about this is that I can go ahead and grab whatever time needs to be associated to this progress bill. And I'm going to show you guys something at the very end, something that we're adding and trying to take care of for you. It's called the billing code, so this BC. If you guys didn't know, there is a billing code called, well, it's not added to this one yet. There is a billing code called progress bill, and we can utilize that to kind of filter our time. So take a look at that. We'll come back to it. We'll revisit that idea. But what I'm going to do right this is I'm just going to go ahead and hit select all. All of this time is good. We'll click OK. Okay. So we got $3,541 worth of time that we're associating to this progress bill. This point I'm going to click OK. I'm going to be asked if I would like to update my total of my invoice, $10,000 to $3,541. The answer to that is definitely no. I want to retain my $10,000. And then it's going to ask, would you like to apportion the time cards? This piece right here, this little prompt, is the whole point of what we've accomplished right now, is we get true utilization on a staff level and on a client level. That's why we've done all of this, is to keep those reports clean. So in this example, we definitely want to click yes. My invoice did not change. If I go in and look at my time cards, you'll notice that they've been written up. Okay. And at this point, I can go ahead and mark this final. I've just created true accounts receivable. I've released all of my time into that invoice, taken my appropriate adjustment, and the last piece to this puzzle is jumping over to payments and actually applying our retainer to that invoice. So just open that up, take our $2,000 and stick it on that $10,000 invoice down there at the bottom. Save and close, and that process is finished. So you might have retainers, equaling up to the total bill amount. You would just take each one, apply it to the progress bill invoice. But in the grand scheme now, what you can do is go back to your invoice here, open it up. It's in final, the payment's been applied, and what you can see when all this adds up is they'll have their true balance due, which right now we have a lot of extraneous, invoices in there that haven't been paid. But in the grand scheme, it'll show exactly what they need to pay at that point. So if you were just progress billing them, you would be able to see that they owe at this point $8,000. Okay, so that's method number one. Again, we call that, if you remember, it was create and delete. You create your intermittent invoices and then you delete them. That's the idea. That's the piece that changes. So you track your time, you do your thing with that. You bill the client appropriately as you bill them in their specific chunks. You have your final bill created, in process, waiting, and then at the very end, you're collecting your retainers. You delete your intermittent invoices, associate your time to your regular final progress bill, and then apply all of your retainers to that invoice. Again, remember, workarounds, but it will get you very, very, very close. Okay. Just remember in those scenarios that your reports might be a little inflated. In certain instances, whether that's WIP or AR or even credit, you got to make sure that you're accounting for that. But in the long run, that is a way of accomplishing progress billing inside of OfficeTools. Now, some of you might be thinking that's way too much. I'm never going to do that. That sounds like a terrible idea. Method number two, is really easy. It's the same exact process, so everything is the same, except for the fact that you wouldn't create your satellite or intermittent invoices in OfficeTools. That would happen outside of OfficeTools, like in Word or something like that. The reason for that is that a lot of people that I deal with, that I've discussed progress billing with, trying to figure out ways to do this in OfficeTools, have kind of told me that those intermittent bills that I'm sending out for $2,000 or $3,500 or $4,500, those are for kind of like payment reminders. Like, hey, all right, so we've used up the retainer that we have up to this point. Let's go ahead and get some more cash in the door. We're going to bill you a little bit more to keep up with the progress bill. So they're not true invoices in that sense. They're more just payment reminders to the client that remind them, hey, we need some money in the door. Go ahead and pay this when you get a chance. And it's a way of collecting a retainer ahead of the progress bill at the end. So in that case, the process is the same. You still track your time. You still create your $10,000, progress bill at the end. You still collect your retainers. The only difference is that you're not spending time in OfficeTools creating and deleting invoices. So that's why we call it outside help. You're using an outside program like Word or something like that to go ahead and substitute in those payment reminders. So that's method number two. In the grand scheme of things, we are working on better options to supplement those processes, which leads me to this. If we jump up to the time section, time section here, you'll notice inside of here, let me go ahead and stick some time back over there. Fallen victim to my own quickness. All right, we're going to delete that payment. Go back to our invoices. Let's go ahead and refresh that screen. Going to delete this invoice, and that time will be released back to WIP. Okay. So here's all your time. So if you guys didn't know, there's this column on your billing tab under the time button here called BC. All right, and under that BC column, you'll notice that there's a progress bill selection. Okay, so what's cool about this is that you guys can go in, use your work codes as sorts, do that thing, and label this time as BC. Because what a lot of people end up going is they're trying to run their WIP reports, but they can't get true WIP numbers because their progress build time is kind of filtered in there. Because remember, we told you you have to leave your WIP in WIP until the end of the job. So how do you get a true WIP number then if all of your progress build time is now mixed in? Well, one thing that we've added into our new version, and we're going to be fine-tuning it, is the capability of using the bill code as a filter on your WIP reports. So if you go into your reports and then billing reports, you can see under WIP report, it'll say, right now it says billing status, but you'll see it'll eventually say billing code. You'll have the capability of filtering down to just your progress billing time, or even omitting the progress bill time from your WIP report. That way you can get true progress billing numbers and also true WIP numbers. So keep that in mind. That is something that we're adding. If you aren't aware of it, start trying to get into the practice of changing your bill code for your progress build time to that R selection. That way it kind of organizes it in a way that you can use as a filter later on. So I just wanted to point that out for you guys. We're getting close to our time here. We're going to try to stay a couple minutes past just to get you guys a little bit more information since we were kind of late there. But the last thing that we want to go over here is the actual progress bill button that you'll find under the invoices section here. Because a lot of people go, wow, man, you spend a lot of time explaining how to do this elaborate process, but there's something right here called progress bill. Won't that work for me? So let me explain a little bit about what our progress bill option does inside of the program here. So when you click on it, it's going to ask you either to add a progress bill or to manage existing progress bills. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and click on add a progress bill. And we'll call this our giant engagement. I'm having a lot of trouble spelling today, if you can't see that. Okay. So we'll go ahead and add our missing letters. And then we'll put that $10,000 in right here from our previous example. So I put that in, and then I click OK. And then now it brings up this screen. Now you'll notice it's kind of empty. There's not a lot of information to this. But down here at the bottom, we'll see some intriguing options. We've got total progress billing, $10,000. We have invoiced to date, representing 0. And then we also have remaining progress billing, showing us that we have $10,000 still ready to be billed. We also have previously invoiced, current invoice, and less paid amount, total due. It kind of shows us that. Now, what this actually does is it allows you to plug in how much you're going to bill, and then attach invoices to the progress bill. So let's just say we grab this invoice here. And at that point, you'll notice that it plugs in invoice to date, and it shows us how much we have left. That's pretty much what it does. So jokes around here is that it's kind of a glorified calculator. Helps you understand how much you have left to bill, which can be very helpful. But past that, that's really all it does. So what you have to be careful of here is thinking that this is doing what you want it to do in the reporting side, because the time cards are still associated directly to one invoice, meaning that your adjustments are not true because they're not applied to the total invoice amount. That's really the catch here, is that if you're trying to get true utilization numbers on a staff level or also on a client level, then you cannot use this piece solely for your progress billing, because your time needs to be associated to an invoice worth the entire engagement amount. If it isn't, then the write-ups and write-downs aren't true, and while it will wash probably for the client, your staff numbers can be really, really, really affected. Okay, so what you want to do is try to avoid this if you're going to be associating time to individual invoices, because you remember we attached invoice number 60286 to this quote-unquote progress bill to get these numbers. So it's still invoicing by one at a time, and then associating it to the $10,000 total. Okay. That's really what our progress billing inside of OfficeTools does. Is it allows you basically to see how much you have left to bill based on your total amount and invoice to date. So utilizing method number 1 or method number 2, when it really boils down, either your delete or create and delete method, number one, or your outside help method, number two. That's going to be how you gain true progress building numbers in the long run. But you can use as a supplement the progress bill option to help you identify how much you have left to invoice. Biggest thing I can remind you of is that start getting into the habit on the time section of labeling your time R for progress bill. That way you can use it down the line as a way of reporting, excluding your progress bill time from your reports, reporting directly on your progress bill time. It'll be helpful in the long run, and it's one of our missing pieces. So we're developing progress billing as we go. We're finding ways to make it easier. Understand again that it's kind of a workaround, and kind of see if that process can fit when you guys are trying to do progress billing. Okay. We're going to go ahead and wrap up at this point. If you guys have any questions or need some extra help, or maybe just a quick walkthrough on your own data during your billing, just let us know. Email training@officetools.com. So training@officetools.com. That comes to our whole team. You can also jump onto the Abacus Next website, go to ProServe, and actually schedule a session for time and billing if you want us to link up and kind of look at your data and help you through this process. But if you guys need anything else, any other questions that arise, please feel free to get in contact with us. Make sure to check the upcoming webinar schedule, abacusnext.com/webinar, see what we have, and also visit abacusmaximus.com to take a look at our upcoming Abacus Maximus conference, see if that could be of use to you. And thanks again for joining. Thanks for your patience in the beginning here, being a little tardy, and hopefully you guys got something out of this. And yeah, thanks again for joining. We'll talk to you guys next week.